Mic check 1 2. You sure the mic working? I bet, cause I don't want to mess up now. I'm Barr+Friends. We keep it authentic, funny, and inspirational. Welcome to the episode. Oh, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, do anything you want to just support us. And let's just get into this. Ah, man, I love this.
I am your host, Christian Barr, and this is the Barr and Friends podcast. Joining me for conversation tonight, Christian, calm down. You already getting preachy. Is a husband, father, pastor, doctor, author, life coach, strategic thinker, consultant, founder of Empowered Life Network. Tonight we have Dr. BT3. How you doing, sir?
Oh man, I'm doing great. You're making me blush. You're making me blush. I'm light skinned. I'll turn red.
I had to make sure that that intro was on point. Give us your genesis. Give us cliff notes to how you got into ministry. Like, did you know at a young age that you wanted to preach and encourage the body of Christ?
The Cliff Notes version, as you can tell, I go by BT3. My government name is Benjamin Thomas Moore III. So I'm named after my father, named after my grandfather. And my grandfather was a pastor. His father was a pastor. And my father's mother's father was a bishop as well. And so I'm actually a fourth generation pastor. So that's my genesis before my genesis. That's my pre-story before I got here. Um, from a very young age, I knew I was called to preach and to be in ministry. I very explicitly remember I had to been probably 5, 6 years old. We were at church, and I'm a PK-ish kind of, and so we're always in church. I only look 25, but I'm a little bit older than that. And so when I was coming up, it was no big deal to be in church. I mean, just all the time. Like that was just our life. And so um I just remember at a very young age, I was sitting in church, probably like I said, about maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I I just I just knew. I saw open vision of myself as an adult standing behind the podium. And it was just an innate knowing. And I didn't share that with anybody. Nobody forced it upon me. It was just I was sitting in church and I just looked up and I saw what I knew was myself as an adult preaching. So that was kind of how I knew.
Now, exactly what age did you start, like, I guess, getting in, jumping in, like getting your feet wet into ministry, I would say?
Sure. I would say I probably started to feel like the like in a more official way, I should say. Maybe
Right.
the tug of ministry, maybe when I was around 12, 13 years old. I got baptized in 1988. So that should let you know a little bit how
What?
believe it or yeah, oh yeah. I got baptized in 88. I was actually filled with the Holy Ghost in 1990. And so probably around the age of 13, 14 years old is when I started to take it. Not that I wasn't taking it serious, but started to actually kind of start feeling that push and that burden. And people were starting to confirm it around me, oh, you're going to be a preacher. Oh, you're going to, and some of that I just kind of dismissed because, again, I'm named after my grandfather, born and raised in church. There are certain proclivities and things that you just kind of innately pick up. And so it was in, how old was I? I think I was a sophomore in high school, 16 years old, 15, 16 years old when I actually accepted the call in the ministry in 1997. I was still in high school, is when I actually sat down with my pastor and said, This is what I feel God has called me to do, et cetera, and et cetera. And that was in 1997.
Now let me ask this off the cuff, because do you have you experienced burnout? Because you've been doing this for a minute, so have you experienced burnout? And yeah,
There's never been a time when I officially like said, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
You know, there's never been a time when I officially did that. But have I done that in my mind? Yes. Have I taken breaks? Yes. Have I been exasperated and frustrated? Absolutely. But have I ever just officially just walked away and, just kind of wiped my hands of everything? No. To the glory of God and by the grace of God, I have not done that. But I completely and totally unequivocally understand preachers who do and experience that. And which is why I started taking breaks. Probably, I want to say probably about 7 years into our senior pastorate. I started taking the month of October off.
Okay.
When I was a young minister, you're like, oh, I just want to preach, and I'm just so excited, and every opportunity and I'm just, you just so geeked and fired up. But after a while, when you really start pastoring and leading people and start digging into, some of the more serious issues and serious matters, and your responsibilities are growing, it's like, okay, wait, I need to take a break. I need to take a step back. So I started taking October off every year just to kind of chill out.
I hear that, doctor, because I mean I'm not a pastor yet, but I was serving in New York City under my old pastor, and he wanted to start a church plant right in Harlem. And man, answering emails and going to the hospital and then trying, and you have 3 kids too, and just trying to prep throughout the week, the message or the sermon that you want to deliver on a Sunday morning, man. It takes a toll on you, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even when you don't think it does, it does. Sometimes you're going so much, so much, so much. And then when you actually stop, it's like, wait, I didn't know how tired I was. Or,
Right.
when you start to ease back into it, it's like firing up a car, in the dead of winter that's been sitting for a week. It takes a minute to get the engine going. It takes a minute because you just been chilling and doing your best to kind of disconnect from it so to give your brain and your mind and your soul and your spirit and your body a rest, because all that's important as well.
Ooh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. What are some of the things you had to give up slash sacrifice when going into ministry?
I do remember very distinctly, I, and I had thank God I had kind of a balanced upbringing to some degree. Because yeah, we were always at church and I enjoyed it and I was singing in a youth choir and these sorts of things, but I was also very active uh, athletically. Football, I played football, I ran track, played basketball, and that was really my sport, basketball.
Hey.
And I mean, I played in middle school, 7th and 8th grade. But when you start getting into those high school ages, that's when, the coaches and teams start taking it really, really serious. This is when AAU was first becoming a thing. This was way before NIL. This is when AAU, was first becoming a thing. And
Yeah.
the sacrifice for me was I was going into high school my freshman year, and of course the coaches there, they knew of me because our high school was being fed by 3 middle schools. And so I was a part of one of those middle schools. Of course, we played this school and played that school, and I was actually kind of good. And so when I found out that I would have to miss Bible class for practice, that's when I stepped away. And so I kind of am kicking myself now, but all things work together for the good. So my sophomore year of high school, I said, I'm gonna try out. And I had a good tryout, and the coach literally said, or it got back to me, should I say, that the only reason I think it was a coach actually, one of the assistant JV coaches, the only reason you didn't make the team is because you didn't play your freshman year. And so I was like, oh man, because I was better than some of the guys on the team, and I knew it, and they knew it. But like I said, when you get to that high school level, they start to really try to stick with their guys, and it becomes a system, and you get it.
So you pretty much sacrifice sports for the gospel. And like you said, it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it worked out. Yeah. I stopped growing, and so such is
Right.
life.
How did you form your preaching style? Now, let me explain a little bit in detail what I mean, because of course, you sound like yourself. But, you know, here and there throughout the years, we, watch a little bit of Creflo Dollar, or, a little bit of that bishop or that apostle and this and that and the other. And we try to just, kind of, you know, I, I don't want to say copy and paste, but we try to, in a sense, imitate some of the people that we love, the greats. But yeah, like, what formed your preaching style? And I guess, when did you when did you get to a point where, no, like, I sound like Dr. BT3 now?
Yeah,
You get what I mean?
I think so. So again, it's a complicated question with a complicated answer. So, um, my grandfather was known to be what in some traditions, some denominations, a hooper, right?
Right.
Grabbing your ear and yeah, and tell your neighbor and yeah, and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he actually passed away in 1988. So I was a little guy when he passed away, and the next pastor that I had wasn't like that. And the next pastor that I had when I accepted my call to ministry was a flat-footed teacher. So it was kind of like nurture versus nature. Whereas every week I'm sitting under a pastor who is educated, has his doctorate, is a phenomenal teacher, an intellectual, but my genetics is more of a excitable kind of hooping kind of style. So I really kind of consider myself a mutt. I'm a treacher. I'm a hybrid.
Okay.
So at any moment, you might get the old school, shake the mic, scream and holler, hoop and holler. And then I just might be Dr. Moore and just be like, A plus B equals C and da 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 da. And then sometimes it's a little mixture of both in a ministry presentation. So I- so I sound like myself, because I just I don't go into to me, ministry is sacred.
Right.
And
Right.
so I've matured to a place where I don't feel it necessary to entertain or to kill them, or to do whatever. Like for me, the message that God has given to me is most important. And however that message is best conveyed is how I'm going to try to do my best to deliver it. I've been around preachers all of my life, and they ask these, "Ooh, who's the best hooper, and who's this, and who's that?" And yeah, doc, and I abhor that type of
Yep.
minimizing of ministry to
Right.
style and to just looking at the numbers of a particular church, because ministry is not numbers, ministry is not style. It's a lot deeper than that. And so a lot of some of my colleagues, contemporaries, they value those sorts of things, and I don't.
Right.
Not to that degree. I think it's something, obviously you don't want to be a bump on the log, and administration and those sorts of things. Yes, those things are important, but they're not they're not the meat and the potatoes. That's the gravy. That's the
Right.
side. That's the broccoli. That's the asparagus. What's the steak? You know what I'm saying? Like, give me,
Right.
like, what is the most important thing? And believe it or not, I actually want to see Jesus in peace.
What's one experience in your life? It can be in the past or right now here. What's one humbling experience that you've went through that made you just be like, "Whoo, okay, Lord, I hear you."
Like, how much time we got for how many? Um, I mean, I feel to share this. I feel to share this testimony, and every time I do, I get emotional. So I'm gonna do my best not to get too emotional. So, I was I think a freshman in college. So I was about 20, 21, somewhere in there, about 4 years ago,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
and I got into it really, really bad with my mom, who I was living with at the time, and ended up getting kicked out of my house. And I was so embarrassed because, again, I was a young minister. Um, and I really dealt with a lot of condemnation and depression around that. And it was very, very hard. It was a very difficult season in my life. And I remember I was standing in my father's kitchen, and I picked up a knife, and I literally held it to my wrist, and I heard the voice of the Lord say to me, "Son, don't do that." And so it wasn't like, is this God or is this me? Like, it was one of those, like, crack open the ceiling, and, like, it was just one of those types of moments. And just those few words, "Son, don't do that." I felt, sorry, I told you I get kind of emotional when I think about it.
Yeah.
Um, but I felt loved. I felt accepted. I felt corrected, and I felt convicted all at the same time. It was like, just all of those things in one. And so I put the knife down. I went downstairs to my bedroom, fell on my knees, and cried like a baby, and repented. And then my life started to change. Things started happening for me in a good way. And so it's really, I think, that experience, um, amongst others, but that one really is one of the keystone moments in my life, in my relationship with God, where it's like, you can't tell me that God isn't real. I don't care how many philosophical arguments and all this other, well, Jesus was a fictional character in the Greek. I don't, I, yeah, it,
Yeah,
you're wasting your time,
right.
because when you actually have had an encounter with Jesus, and when you've actually experienced his love and his presence, not out of your imagination, but when you are in a low place. I'm not talking about I was praying and I was crying out to God. I was in a low place, and God rescued me. And so that's why, even from that moment on, I made a promise to myself. I'm like, I will never allow myself to get that down. And life will never and so I've never been to that place again. And so, have I had some hard times and some hard days from that moment? Absolutely. But that is an anchor, and it's like, God is never going to leave me. He's never going to forsake me. And this is why I do what I do in ministry, because nobody who has anything negative to say about me or whatever, you didn't call me. He did. And so he's going to empower me and give me the grace that I need to fulfill the mission and the assignment that he's given to me. Is that always easy? Absolutely not. Do I have some good days and some bad days? You better believe it. But beyond that is an inner knowing and an inner peace that comes like, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for him. And I want to make him happy.
We needed to have those experiences, because how are we going to be able to encourage and edify and give testimonies from our life if we haven't gone through anything ourselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I went through a situation uh right at the beginning of the pandemic. 2020 was hard for many reasons. I know everybody was going through the pandemic, but I'm not even talking about COVID. I'm talking about other things.
Right.
And one of the things that the Lord shared with me, and it really began to help me and heal me through that situation, is he said, you got to forgive yourself for what they did to you. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
Right.
And so if you kind of like sit and think about it, it makes a lot of sense. But what it did, it turned on the light for me to help me understand that even though people have done certain things that, of course, I didn't want them to do, or they did to me, a lot of times we blame ourselves. And particularly if we're in a leadership position, why did my son do this? Why did my daughter do that? Why did my second tier leaders do this? Why did, people do this that I'm responsible for, that I love, that I've shown grace to, that I've given money to, that I've, helped their marriage. I've, done all these wonderful things for them. How could they do that? There must be something wrong with me. And it was like, no, you've got to forgive yourself for what they did. So you got to take yourself out of the equation and understand that people make their own decisions. People do what they do because that's what people do. And that doesn't mean that we can't look at ourselves critically and say, how could I have done things better? Or how could I have done things differently? But at the end of the day, people make their own decisions and they make their own choices. And so to carry around the burden of what's wrong with me, I'm a failure. I suck. I'm so instead of beating yourself up about what other people have done to you, forgive yourself. Well, if I wish I could have, if I would have seen it coming, then I could. No. Forgive yourself. There's a reason why God allows certain things and orchestrates certain things. And we may not understand it all at the same time. And it may not be, nicely packaged into our intellectual capacities. But if we sing a song, we'll understand it better by and by, and like you said, how will we be able to be an effective witness and minister if we've ourselves never experienced the power of God that we're talking about and preaching about and helping other people with? So, tag your it. If you're going to be a leader, you gave your life to the Lord, there's going to be some suffering. There's going to be some inconvenient moments. There's going to be some moments where it's not going to be cute and fun. Paul said in Philippians chapter 3 that I may know him in the fellowship of his sufferings. And so we kind of gloss over that part, but he also said, if you're going to reign with me, you got to suffer with me. So there's a level of endurance. There's a level of having to go through things that are uncomfortable for the believer who is actually giving their life to the Lord. Just a part of it.
Have you gone through church hurt?
How much time do we have? Listen, let me tell you. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me clear my throat.
You just gave me an alley-oop for that. I'm like, okay.
That's a lob. That's a lob. Let me say this. And I'm being facetious, but I'm being very serious.
Yeah.
There is nobody who gets hurt in the church more than the pastor.
Facts.
I don't like I've been on both sides. Before my wife and I started our church 15 years ago, we were serving as assistant pastor. I was serving as assistant pastor for 4.5 years. So I've served as a second tier leader under a pastor, and I've been in a senior pastor position for the last 15 years. I'm telling you, the saints can say some stuff to you, and it's wrong and rude, and saints be sainting. But church hurt is real, and I'm not trying to minimize it because it does happen. But a lot of times what church hurt equates to is, and I'm not trying to be insensitive when I say this, because I know there are real incidences where people are literally sexually abused and verbally abused and spiritually abused, and so I'm not making light of that at all.
Right.
At all. But a lot of times, per my experience, a lion's share of people who call or who cry church hurt is because they did not get their way, or that they have to be called into an account, or they don't agree with something. And I'm telling you, from my seat as a senior pastor, I've been hurt more by church folks who said that they loved me, who said that they honored me, who were okay with literally taking my money. And I'm not talking about the church's benevolence fund. I'm talking about my personal funds. And within a month or less, oh, I'm visiting another church, or I'm going to another church. It's stuff like that. You share your heart, you share your vision, and people use it against you. Um, uh, you share your heart and your vision, and you bring people in, even into your home and in your personal space, and you make a statement, and they take your statement out of context, don't tell you that whatever it is that you said made them feel uncomfortable or uneasy or upset,
Yep.
and then come back and make little, snide, passive aggressive remarks. And then when you confront them on it, well, you said X, Y, and Z 3 months ago, and I haven't been able to hear and receive from you because I heard you say this, this, and this. So you
Yeah.
haven't been able to receive from me. You call me your spiritual father because I made a statement at my house that had nothing to do with you, and you took what I said out of context, and you didn't have enough respect and value for the relationship to come to me and have a conversation. And,
Ooh.
and to make matters worse, a lot of times we don't exercise that biblical principle that Jesus said in Matthew, where he says, if your brother offends you, you got to ought with somebody. You go to that brother. You go
Right.
to them. And if they don't want to hear you, you take somebody else with you. And if then they don't want to hear you, then you take it public. A lot of times we skip step 1 and step 2 and go straight to Facebook. We
Ooh.
skip step 1 and step 2 and go straight to the group me text. We skip step 1 and step 2 and go to inboxes. And so it causes more hurt, more division in the body than is necessary. And a lot of times, and see, my wife and I pioneered our church. So we weren't a church plant. I didn't take over a church. We started in my living room. We started in our living room with one person who would fall asleep on me as I'm teaching. So I'm saying that to say I didn't have the backing of the feeder church sending us 50 members to get us started. I didn't
Right.
have the luxury of a paid off building to and so what I'm saying is there's a different level of investment when you build from the ground up, and then when you start to experience these sorts of attacks and these sorts of you know bickering and we're not talking about, oh, you found me in sin. We're talking about you don't like you didn't agree with something I said. We're not talking about, oh, you stealing money or you sleeping around or you're getting drunk and you getting high every week. We're not talking about stuff like that. We're talking about you're offended because I said something you did not like, or how I said it you didn't appreciate. And so now you're hurt and you're going to tell everybody else about how hurt you are. So now you're literally becoming an instrument of division and discord in the house of God.
And then they're telling other people in your congregation about the beef that they have with you. And so now you have this side of the congregation versus this side of the congregation.
100%. I lived through that. 100%. And it's hard to preach. I mean, it's extremely difficult to preach through that because, it's who's with me, who's for me. They're examining every single word. So now my preaching is like I'm triple guessing myself. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like,
Right.
turn to Acts chapter 5. Is that okay with y'all? Is Acts chapter 5 okay? Is that okay? And I'm being funny right now, but the sentiment is real. It's like,
Real.
it's like, are y'all gonna have a problem if I use the word sin? Like
Right.
transgression, you know, and so you're walking on eggshells, and it's very uncomfortable and it's hurtful.
You can just nod your head with what I'm going to say because I want your flock to love you still after this convo. I also think, too, is that when you are a pastor or a leader of a church and you just keep it 1,000 with your saints, they don't like that. And I want to dare say that they want this soft, cuddle me to sleep type of uh, ministry or word. And so once it comes from this to like, hey, listen, like, stop this. You know what I'm saying? They get offended, they get upset, and yeah, I just want people to realize that it's okay to have other opinions. Like you said in your video, in your TikTok video a couple days ago, it's okay to disagree, but you don't have to leave the church. You don't have to cause drama. Like, it's okay to have your favorite color be blue and mine may be gray. It's okay. Like, that is the purpose of the church. That is the purpose of the body of Christ. So that way I can be able to bounce off ideas with you and you keep it real with me and vice versa. And we build each other up. Iron sharpens iron, you know?
I had a policy and I still do, it's open door policy. It's like you can say anything to me as long as you're respectful.
Right.
Like we don't have to agree on everything as long as we can talk respectfully.
Right.
And I don't have to agree with everything that you do or say for me to love you. Like my love doesn't have to be contingent upon our agreement on everything. And
Mm.
and I think that is a testimony, a bad testimony of us as an American church because we live in let me be careful. We live in a democratic society where we
Right.
hear things like live your truth, your vote matters. Everything has an agenda attached to it. Everything has a side attached to it. Everything has, are you with them or you with us?
Right.
Right now we're seeing the protest every single morning on the news on college campuses with the Palestinian-Israeli war. And in fact, you referenced one of my TikTok videos. I just taught on this the other day about navigating gray areas, because the truth of the matter is life is not black or white or this or that. Life is complicated. It's gray areas. And so we've been called to love each other even in gray areas. We've been called to be one even in gray areas. Paul said, the eye cannot say to the ear, I have no need of thee.
Right.
And so we're a body fitly joined together. And so my ear looks nothing like my nose, but they're located on the same head. to,
Right.
to do different things, right? My nose can't hear a thing, my ears can't smell a thing, but putting those things together, they're working to discern my environment. So there's a piece of the puzzle that you have that I don't have, and vice versa. And so I want you to think differently than me. I hope that we can celebrate the differences without becoming, calling our differences demonic. And so we got to really do a better job at that. And let me just go back to this one thing you said very quickly. You mentioned that people want to be coddled a lot of times. Well, in 2011, I was affirmed as an apostle by my spiritual father. And I've done a lot of my ministry work around the fivefold ministry: the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. That's where I do a lot of my leadership training, and those sorts of things. In fact, that's what my doctoral dissertation was on. It's called Fit, Function, and Flow, a ministry leadership model. And when you really begin to understand that the personality, the call, the assignment of an apostle is a little bit different from the grace, personality, and assignment of the pastor, you're going to see a difference in delivery. You're going to see a difference in tone. You're going to see a difference in methodology. The
Right.
Apostle Paul, if you read the epistles, we read it in a very docile kind of way, but he makes statements like, it's good that I'm not there presently with you. you know,
Yes.
he, he's like, it's come to my attention that, this guy's sleeping with his father's mother, turn him over to Satan. Um,
Right.
you know, Acts chapter 5, I made mention of earlier with the apostle Peter, confronting Ananias and Sapphira. So when you begin to look at apostolic ministry and really just the biblical text, particularly the New Testament, looking at Jesus, he said some hard things to his disciples. He was an apostle. Jesus said some hard things to those who followed him. John chapter 6, you have no part in me unless you drink my blood and eat my body. And the Bible says that many people were offended and left.
Yes.
And then he turns to his disciples and say, are y'all leaving too?
Yes.
But
Yep.
notice Jesus did not say, wait, don't leave. I didn't mean it like that. Let me explain. No, he didn't do that. He turned to his side, are y'all leaving too? And I think it was John that says, look, or Peter or John, I can't remember which one, said, look, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's a little bit above my head. But where are we going?
We were gonna go, right?
And so the point that I'm making is, the American church really has to do a better job of understanding the different mantles, messages, and graces for different ministry gifts. I know that, there's a big discussion about sensationalists, they don't believe in, the gifts and operation and prophecy and operation. And to me, and I mean this in the most respectful way, I think it's absolutely ridiculous, because I've been a recipient of divine healing. I've been a recipient of accurate prophetic words that nobody knew about in my life that got revealed to this man or woman of God. So it's like the proof is in the pudding. The proof is not in your intellect.
Mm.
We try to fit God in our denominational boxes and in our experiential boxes rather than allowing our experiences inform our doctrine. I just and of course that needs to be balanced with scriptures. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
Right.
But I
Right.
just posted something the other day, and I concluded it with St. John chapter 21, verse 25. And it says, "And many things that Jesus did that I can't even put into this book, like the books of the world cannot contain." And so I'm saying that to say, when Paul was in his ministry, earthly ministry, he didn't have the gospels to reference. When Jesus was in his ministry, he wasn't referencing the gospels. He all they had was the Old Testament. So there was experiences in God that was happening. Think about the book of Acts. The Gentiles are receiving the Holy Spirit. They're not being circumcised. Apostle James in Acts 15, you know, he quotes an Old Testament scripture prophecy to receive the Gentiles into the church. And the point that I'm making is this: we run into a problem when we try to pigeonhole God according to our denominational boxes and filters instead of allowing God to be God.
Which brings me to my next question. Like, can you love God and still be gangster?
I mean, let's just keep going. Jesus is the perfect example of that. Like, I did a series some years ago called Jesus Uncensored, right?
Ooh.
Because we have this perspective of Jesus, like I don't know if you've seen that play or that movie, Jesus Christ Superstar, where
I heard about it. Yeah.
he's just kind of like floating around, and he's got this little finger out, and the butterfly, comes to, it's like, no, man, he was a carpenter, which meant he was rough. He was courageous at a young age, letting his family go, and he stayed back at the temple. But he made statements like, "You brood of vipers," talking to the leaders of the time, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He's like, you're full of dead man's bones. And they wanted to kill Jesus. Why? Because of the things that he said, the things that he espoused about himself. He said, "For a good work, you're going to kill me." The reason they had such a problem with him is because he said, "God is my father." Like, that was offensive to them, right? You know, um, eh, when they told him in Luke chapter 13 that Herod was out to kill him, he said, "Well, you go back and tell that fox that I cast out demons, that people are being healed." And so, he wasn't a punk.
Right.
He wasn't soft. He
Right.
wasn't, well, I just, Millie Mouth, will you guys please follow me? I just love you so much, and I would just really appreciate if you would just receive me. Like, he was like, it is what it is. You can't be my disciple unless you deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. You heard me say, drink my blood, eat my flesh. Are you leaving? How long have I been with you and you still don't know who I am? like he was a dude. Like, he wasn't, just this, oh gosh, gee willikers, we're gonna, you know, I mean, he said stuff that would be considered insulting. He was like, you can discern the sky, you can discern when it's about to rain, but you can't discern the times. Like, there's so many, he says to Peter in Matthew 16, "Get thee behind me, Satan, for you are an offense to me. For you savor us not the things that be of God, the things that be of man." Like, how many people would be able to endure hearing their pastor call him Satan in front of everybody else? Christianity has been hijacked by Americanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I've been privileged to travel to several continents several times, and I can tell you that, and it just, even in my studies, and just even as I grow in knowledge, I don't know everything. Um, I think sometimes we forget that the scriptures were written over a span of, I believe, 1,500 years by many different authors. And it's not the scriptures are not a flat book, right?
Right.
You have poetical books, you have history books,
Right.
you have epistles, you have all sorts of genres of writings. I often say it like this: the Bible is not a book; it's actually a library. And when you don't know how to skillfully divide and apply and understand the scriptures, you're going to get a form, but you're not going to get the unadulterated, you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Impact of it. And so I think, and I hate to say this, but unfortunately, ministry has become big business in America. I'll just say in America, 'cause that's where I live. But it's become big business. And so let me balance that. Is there a business aspect to ministry? Yes. Is there an administrative aspect to ministry? Absolutely. Do we need to be very skillful in how we adjudicate affairs and business? Yes, I get all of that. But unfortunately, a lot of people are um, in big seats, but they're small people.
Once again, Doctor, thank you so much. And this was another episode of Bar and Friends. And see you soon, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right.